1694, Part 2. I have been informed that some commanders have cut off the legs and arms of the most willful, to terrify the rest, for they believe if they lose a member, they cannot return home again. I was advised by some of my officers to do the same, but I could not be persuaded to entertain the least thought of it, much less put in practice such barbarity and cruelty to poor creatures who, accepting their want of Christianity and true religion, their misfortune more than fault, are as much the works of God's hand, and no doubt as dear to him as ourselves. Nor can I imagine why they should be despised for their colour, being what they cannot help, and the effect of the climate it has pleased God to appoint them. I can't think there is any intrinsic value in one colour more than another, nor that white is better than black. Only we think so because we are so, and are prone to judge favourably in our own case as well as the blacks, who in odium, hatred and loathing of the colour, say the devil is white, and so paint him. After we have come to an agreement for the prices of our slaves, we are obliged to pay our customs to the king and capaciers for leave to trade, protection, and justice, for which every ship are as follows. To the king, 6 slaves value in cowries or what other goods we can persuade him to take, but cowries are most esteemed and desired, all which are measured in his presence, and he would wrangle with us stoutly about heaping up the measure. To the capaciers in all 2 slaves value as above. The best goods to purchase slaves here are cowries, the smaller the more esteemed. The next in demand are brass neptunes, large pans for obtaining salt, are basins, plates, very large, thin and flat, for after they have bought them, they cut them in pieces to make bracelets and collars for their arms, legs and neck. The other preferable goods are blue paper slettias, cambrics or lawns, caddychins, broad ditto, all types of cloth, coral, large, smooth, and of a deep red, rangos or beads, large and red, iron bars, powder, and brandy. But without the cowries and brass, they will take none of the last goods, and but small quantities at best, especially if they can discover that you have a good store of cowries and brass abroad. Then no other goods will serve their turn till they have got as much as you have. And after, for the rest of the goods they will be indifferent, and make you come to their own terms, or else lie a long time for your slaves, so that those you have on board are dying while you are buying others ashore. Therefore, every man that comes here ought to be very cautious in making his report to the king at first, of what sorts and quantities of goods he has, and be sure to say his cargo consists mostly in iron, coral, rangos, chintz, etc., so that he may dispose of those goods as soon as he can, and at last his cowries and brass will bring him slaves as fast as he can buy them. But this is to be understood of a single ship, or more if the captains agree, which seldom happens. For there are various ships and of separate interests about buying the same commodity. They commonly undermine, betray, and outbid one the other. And the Guinea commanders' words and promises are the least to be depended upon of any I know who use the sea, for they would deceive their fathers in their trade if they could. When our slaves are aboard, we shackle the men 2 and 2, while we lie in port and in sight of their own country. For 'tis then they attempt to make their escape and mutiny, to prevent which we always keep sentinels upon the hatchways, and have a chest full of small arms ready loaden and primed, constantly lying at hand upon the quarter-deck. Their chief diet is called dab-a-dab, being Indian corn ground as small as oatmeal in iron mills, which we carry for that purpose, and after mixed with water, and boiled well in a large copper furnace, till 'tis as thick as a pudding, about a peckfell of which in vessels called crews is allowed to 10 men, with a little salt, malagueta or pepper, and palm oil to relish. They are divided into messes of 10 each, for the easier and better order in serving them. 3 days a week they have horse beans boiled for their dinner and supper, great quantities of which the African Company do send aboard for us for that purpose. These beans the Negroes extremely love and desire, beating their breast, eating them, and crying, "Pran, pran," which is very good. They are indeed the best diet for them, having a binding quality, and consequently good to prevent the flux, which is the inveterate distemper that most affects them and ruins our voyages by their mortality. We often at sea in the evenings would let the slaves come up into the sun to air themselves, and make them jump and dance for an hour or two to our bagpipes, harp, and fiddle, by which exercise to preserve them in health. But notwithstanding all our endeavours, 'twas my hard fortune to have great sickness and mortality among them. Having bought my complement of 700 slaves, that is 480 men and 220 women, and finished all my business at Huidau, I took my leave of the old king and his capaciers, and parted with many affectionate expressions on both sides, being forced to promise him that I would return again the next year, with several things he desired me to bring him from England. And having signed bills of lading for the negroes abroad, I set sail the 27th of July in the morning. I delivered alive at Barbados to the company's factors 372, which being sold came out at about £19 per head.